The Georgia sun was merciless that Tuesday afternoon, the kind of heat that makes the asphalt shimmer and dance in the distance. Maya Jenkins had her windows down, letting the warm breeze flow through her car as she drove along the quiet highway. The radio played softly in the background, some old R&B station her mother loved. She was almost home now, just another 20 miles to go. It had been 8 long months since she'd seen her family. 8 months of early mornings, intense training sessions, and the structured life of a Marine Corps instructor. Maya didn't mind it, though. She'd chosen this path when she was 19, fresh out of high school with something to prove. Now at 27, she was one of the youngest sergeants teaching hand-to-hand combat at Camp Lejeune. Her job was to turn new recruits into warriors, to teach them how to protect themselves and others when everything else failed. Her uniform was folded neatly in the back seat, the pressed fabric still crisp despite the humidity. She'd changed into civilian clothes at a rest stop an hour back, eager to shed the formal military appearance and just be herself for a while. Just Maya, going home to see her mom and dad, to sleep in her childhood bedroom, and to eat her mother's cooking until she couldn't move. She checked her rearview mirror out of habit. It was a reflex now, always aware of her surroundings. That's when she saw the police cruiser pull onto the highway from a side road about a quarter-mile back. Maya didn't think much of it at first. She knew she wasn't speeding. Her cruise control was set at exactly 55 miles per hour, right at the limit. Her registration was current, her inspection sticker was fresh, and all her lights worked. She'd checked everything before leaving base because that's what 8 years in the military teaches you. Attention to detail. Always be prepared, but the cruiser was getting closer. She could see it clearly now in her mirror, maintaining the same distance behind her for nearly a mile. Something felt off, but Maya kept her hands steady on the wheel and her eyes on the road. Maybe he was just heading in the same direction. Maybe it was nothing. Then the lights came on, red and blue flashing in her rearview mirror. Maya felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her breathing steady. She'd been pulled over before, twice actually, both times in her early 20s. Once for a broken taillight she didn't know about, and once because the officer thought she'd run a stop sign. Both times had been routine, professional, over within minutes. She had no reason to think this would be any different. She flipped on her turn signal and began to slow down, looking for a safe spot to pull over. The highway here was pretty empty, surrounded by fields and sparse trees. She found a wide shoulder and eased her car to a complete stop, making sure she was fully off the road. The cruiser pulled in behind her, close enough that she could see the officer's silhouette through her mirror. Maya put the car in park and turned off the engine. She placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, visible and unthreatening. This was protocol, something she knew instinctively. Stay calm, stay visible, follow instructions. Her military ID was in her wallet in the center console, along with her driver's license and registration. She waited, watching the mirror. The officer took his time getting out. When he finally emerged from his vehicle, Maya could see he was a white man, probably in his 40s, with a thick build and a swagger in his walk. He adjusted his belt as he approached, his hand resting near his service weapon. That detail caught Maya's attention, sent a small alarm bell ringing in the back of her mind. Her training had taught her to read body language, to assess threats before they materialized. This felt wrong. He stopped at her back window first, looking into the car. Then he walked up to her driver's side window. Maya kept her hands on the wheel, turned her head slightly to look at him, and waited. "License and registration," he said. No greeting, no explanation. His voice was flat, almost bored. "Yes, sir," Maya said calmly. "Can I ask why I was pulled over?" His jaw tightened. "Just give me your license and registration." Maya nodded slowly. "They're in my center console. I'm going to reach for them now." She moved deliberately, slowly opening the console and retrieving her wallet. She pulled out her license and registration, along with her military ID, and handed them through the window. The officer barely glanced at the military ID. He studied her license for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "North Carolina plates," he said. "Long way from home. I'm stationed at Camp Lejeune," Maya explained. "I'm driving home to see my family. I'm on leave, that right?" He looked at her car again, then back at her face. "Step out of the vehicle." Maya felt her heart rate increase slightly, but she kept her voice level. "Sir, I'd like to know why I was pulled over." "I wasn't speeding, and I said step out of the vehicle." His tone had shifted now, harder, more aggressive. His hand moved closer to his weapon. This was escalating fast and Maya knew it. She'd trained for hostile situations, had faced actual combat overseas during her deployments. She could read the signs. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was supposed to be a routine traffic stop on a quiet American highway. She was a United States Marine, a decorated instructor, and she was being treated like a criminal for no reason she could understand. "Sir, with respect, I have a right to know. Get out of the car now." His voice was loud now, commanding, the kind of tone meant to intimidate. Maya made a decision. She would comply, but she would also protect herself. She slowly unbuckled her seatbelt, opened her door, and stepped out, keeping her movement smooth and unthreatening. She stood next to her car, hands visible at her sides. The officer was standing closer than necessary, inside what any trained person would recognize as an aggressive distance. Maya could smell the coffee on his breath, could see the way his pupils were slightly dilated. He was amped up, looking for confrontation. "Turn around, hands on the car," he ordered. "Sir, I haven't done anything wrong. You still haven't told me why you stopped me. You questioning me?" His face was reddening now. "You think you can question me?" Maya kept her voice calm, steady, the same tone she used when addressing new recruits who were panicking during training. "I'm just exercising my rights as a citizen. I'd like to understand what violation I've committed." That's when he grabbed her arm. His grip was tight, painful, his fingers digging into her bicep as he tried to force her around to face the car. It wasn't a professional hold. It wasn't proper procedure. It was aggression, pure and simple. Maya's training kicked in automatically. She assessed the situation in a fraction of a second. They were alone on this stretch of highway. No backup had been called. His body camera, if he had one, wasn't visible. His dashcam might be recording, but she wasn't sure. He was using excessive force for a traffic stop where no violation had been explained. She had two choices: submit to whatever he intended to do or defend herself. The officer's other hand moved toward his taser. Maya saw it happening almost in slow motion, saw the intention in his movement. He wasn't trying to arrest her. He was trying to hurt her. That's when everything changed. 8 years of training, thousands of hours of practice, hundreds of techniques drilled into muscle memory. Maya wasn't thinking anymore. She was reacting, and her body knew exactly what to do. The next 30 seconds would change her life forever. They would spark a national conversation, expose years of hidden corruption, and prove that sometimes the person who looks like a victim is actually a warrior in disguise. But in that moment, standing on the side of Highway 94 with the Georgia sun beating down and a hostile officer's hand on her arm, Maya Jenkins was simply doing what she'd been trained to do. She was surviving. The moment the officer's hand closed around her arm, Maya's body reacted before her conscious mind even registered the decision. It wasn't anger that moved her. It wasn't fear. It was pure training, the kind that gets burned into your nervous system after thousands of repetitions. When someone grabs you with hostile intent, when someone reaches for a weapon to use against you unlawfully, your body knows what to do. She pivoted slightly, using the officer's own grip against him. Her free hand came up and controlled his wrist, breaking his hold in a smooth circular motion that he probably didn't even understand was happening. In the Marine Corps martial arts program, they called it a basic wrist release, something every recruit learned in their first few weeks. But Maya had taught this move to hundreds of Marines. She knew every variation, every counter, every possible response. The officer stumbled back slightly, surprised. His face registered confusion first, then fury. Nobody had probably challenged him like this in years. He reached for his taser again, more aggressively this time, his hand fumbling at his belt. Maya couldn't let that happen. A taser in the wrong hands used without justification could be deadly. She'd seen the reports, read the case studies. She also knew that once he deployed it, she'd be helpless. She had maybe 2 seconds to act. She stepped in close, inside his reach, using her left hand to control his arm before his fingers could close around the taser. Her right hand came up to his shoulder, establishing control points. Then she executed a technique she'd performed so many times she could do it in her sleep. A basic standing arm lock combined with a sweep. The officer's way? He shifted. His balance broke, and suddenly he was going down. He hit the pavement hard but controlled. Maya had made sure of that. She wasn't trying to hurt him, just stop him. That distinction was important. Everything she'd learned, everything she'd taught emphasized appropriate force. You use only what's necessary to end the threat. Nothing more, but the officer wasn't done. He tried to roll, tried to reach for something on his belt. Maya moved with him, maintaining control, her knee between his shoulder blades now, her hands controlling both of his wrists. He was face down on the hot asphalt, breathing hard, still fighting. "Stop resisting," Maya said firmly. "I don't want to hurt you, stop." He cursed at her, the words ugly and filled with rage. He tried to buck her off, but he was fighting against 8 years of combat training and a lifetime of discipline. Maya maintained her position, her breathing steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. That's when she saw his handcuffs on his belt. She made a split-second decision. If she let him up without restraining him, he'd just come at her again, probably with more force. If she ran, she'd be fleeing the scene, which would make everything worse. Her only option was to secure him and call for help. She released one of his wrists long enough to grab the handcuffs. He tried to capitalize on that moment of freedom, tried to twist around, but Maya was faster. She had the first cuff on before he realized what was happening, then the second. Click. Click. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet afternoon. The officer was screaming now, threats and obscenities mixing together. Maya stood up slowly, her legs shaking slightly from the adrenaline, and stepped back. He was secured, face down on the pavement, his own handcuffs binding his wrists behind his back. She pulled her phone from her pocket with trembling fingers and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Maya took a deep breath. My name is Sergeant Maya Jenkins, United States Marine Corps. I'm on Highway 94, approximately 2 miles west of the Millbrook exit. I was pulled over by a police officer who became aggressive and attempted to use his taser on me without justification. I've defended myself and secured him with his own handcuffs. I need backup here immediately, and I need someone in authority to respond to this situation. There was a pause on the other end. The dispatcher probably thought she was hearing things. Ma'am, did you say you handcuffed a police officer? Yes, ma'am. He attacked me during a traffic stop. I'm a military combat instructor. I defended myself using appropriate force. I need backup here now. The officer is not seriously injured, but the situation is contained. Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line. Units are being dispatched to your location immediately. The officer on the ground was still yelling, still making threats. Maya stood several feet away, her phone to her ear, her eyes never leaving him. She was hyper-aware of everything now. The heat radiating off the pavement, the slight breeze moving through the grass on the shoulder. The officer's cruiser with its lights still flashing. Her own car sitting there innocently, her mother's address programmed into the GPS. That's when she noticed the car pulling over on the opposite side of the highway. An older sedan, maybe 15 years old, paint faded by the sun. A woman got out, probably in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a bun. She stood by her car for a moment, just watching, her hand shading her eyes against the sun. Then she pulled out her phone and started recording. Maya felt a wave of relief so intense it almost made her knees weak. A witness, someone who could verify what happened, someone who saw everything, the woman called out across the highway. You okay, honey? Yes, ma'am, Maya called back. I'm okay. Police are on the way. I saw the whole thing, the woman said. I saw what he did. I got it all on video. The officer on the ground started yelling louder, screaming at the woman to mind her own business, to put her phone away. But the woman just stood there calm and steady, her phone still recording. Maya wanted to cry from gratitude, but she kept her composure. The dispatcher was still on the line asking questions, and Maya answered each one precisely. Minutes felt like hours. The officer had stopped struggling but was still cursing, still making threats about what he was going to do to her when his backup arrived. Maya didn't respond. She just stood there, maintaining her position, her military bearing keeping her upright and alert despite the surreal nature of the situation. Then she heard the sirens, multiple vehicles approaching fast from both directions. The cavalry was coming, but Maya didn't know if they were coming to save her or arrest her. 3 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing, officers jumping out with hands on their weapons. Maya immediately raised her hands, phone still in one of them, making herself as non-threatening as possible. Hands up. Drop the phone, one of the officers shouted. Maya complied instantly, letting her phone fall to the ground, her hands high in the air. My name is Sergeant Maya Jenkins, United States Marine Corps. I'm the person who called 911. That officer attacked me during a traffic stop. I defended myself. There's a witness across the highway recording everything. Please look at the dash cam footage. It will show you what happened. The officer on the ground was screaming now, demanding they arrest her, demanding they shoot her. His words were becoming more unhinged, more desperate. One of the responding officers, an older man with silver hair and stripes on his sleeve indicating a higher rank, raised his hand. "Everyone calm down. Nobody's shooting anybody." He looked at Maya, then at his colleague on the ground, then back at Maya. "Ma'am, I need you to keep your hands where I can see them and walk slowly to the patrol car. We're going to sort this out." "Yes, sir," Maya said. "My military ID is in my wallet in my car. My commanding officer's contact information is with it. I have witnesses and there should be dashcam footage." The senior officer's expression shifted slightly. Military ID, witnesses, dashcam. These were details that mattered. "Johnson, go check the dashcam," he ordered one of the other officers. "Peterson, go talk to that woman across the highway, see what she saw. And somebody get Dale off the ground and into a vehicle." Dale. So that was the officer's name. Two of the junior officers moved to help him up, their faces showing confusion and discomfort. This wasn't a standard situation. You didn't usually respond to a call where a citizen had subdued one of your own. Maya stood next to the patrol car, hands still visible, her mind racing but her exterior calm. She'd been in life-threatening situations overseas. She'd faced down actual enemies in actual combat. This should have been nothing compared to that, but somehow it felt worse. This was supposed to be home. This was supposed to be safe. The senior officer walked over to Dale's cruiser and Maya watched as he leaned in to look at the dashboard camera screen. His face was unreadable at first, but as he watched, his jaw tightened. He watched for several minutes, then called over one of the other officers to look. They had a quiet conversation, too low for Maya to hear. The woman from across the highway had walked over now, her phone still out, still recording. A younger officer was talking to her, taking notes, his expression growing more serious with everything she said. Finally, the senior officer walked back to where Maya stood. He looked tired, like he'd aged 10 years in the last 20 minutes. "Ma'am, I've reviewed the footage. I need to ask you some questions, but first I need to tell you that you're not under arrest. Do you understand?" Maya felt something loosen in her chest. "Yes, sir. What's your name and rank?" "Sergeant Maya Jenkins, United States Marine Corps. I'm a martial arts instructor at Camp Lejeune." He nodded slowly. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened here from the beginning." Maya told her story 3 times that afternoon. Once to the senior officer on the side of the highway. Once at the police station to a detective with kind eyes who kept apologizing. And once more to an internal affairs investigator who flew in from the state capitol within hours of the incident. Each time she kept her words precise and factual. No emotion, no embellishment. Just what happened step by step. Exactly as she'd been trained to report after any combat engagement. She explained the traffic stop, the escalation, her attempts to comply, the officer's aggression, and her defensive response. She emphasized that she'd used only the minimum force necessary to protect herself. The woman from the highway, whose name was Beverly Chen, had stayed for hours. She'd given her statement, handed over her phone recording, and refused to leave until she was sure Maya wasn't going to be mistreated. When they finally let Maya make a phone call, Beverly had squeezed her hand and whispered, "You did nothing wrong, honey. Nothing. I saw everything." Maya called her mother first. That conversation was one of the hardest things she'd ever done. Hearing her mother's voice go from excited to confused to terrified in the span of 30 seconds broke something inside her that the actual confrontation hadn't touched. Her father got on the line, his voice steady and strong. He was a Vietnam veteran himself, knew how the system worked, knew how to navigate bureaucracy and injustice. "We're coming to get you," he said. "Don't say anything else without a lawyer present. We'll be there in an hour." Her second call was to her commanding officer at Camp Lejeune. Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Hayes answered on the 3rd ring. Maya gave her a brief rundown of the situation, and there was a long silence on the other end. "Jenkins, are you injured?" "No, ma'am." "Is anyone seriously injured?" "No, ma'am." I used controlled techniques. "The officer has some bruising, maybe some road rash, but nothing requiring medical attention beyond basic first aid." Another pause. "You handcuffed a police officer?" "Yes, ma'am. After he attacked me and attempted to deploy his taser without justification." "There's dash cam footage, ma'am, and a civilian witness who recorded the entire incident." "Good." The relief in Hayes' voice was palpable. That's very good. Listen to me carefully, Maya. You're one of my best instructors. I know how you train, I know your discipline, and I know you wouldn't have done this unless you had no other choice. I'm making some calls right now. You'll have the full support of the Corps behind you. Do exactly what the local authorities tell you. Cooperate fully and don't speak to any media until we get legal representation sorted out. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. By the time Maya's parents arrived, the police station was in controlled chaos. The internal affairs investigator had reviewed the dashcam footage 3 times. Beverly's cell phone video had been uploaded to a secure server. And someone somewhere had leaked the story to the media. The first news van showed up around 6 in the evening. Then another. Then 5 more. By 8 o'clock, there were reporters camped outside the station. Their cameras trained on every door. Their questions shouted at anyone who came or went. The story was too good, too volatile, too perfectly timed with national conversations about police conduct and racial justice. A black woman Marine disarms and handcuffs a white police officer during an unlawful traffic stop. The footage exists. There's a witness. It's all documented. Maya sat in a small interview room, her parents on either side of her, a lawyer provided by the Marine Corps sitting across the table. The lawyer's name was Captain David Torres, a JAG officer who specialized in military personnel dealing with civilian legal issues. He'd driven 6 hours from Camp Lejeune the moment Hayes called him. "Here's where we stand," Torres said, spreading out papers on the table. "The dash cam footage is clear. You were pulled over without reasonable suspicion. The officer never explained why he stopped you. He became aggressive when you exercised your right to ask questions. He grabbed you without justification and reached for his taser. Everything you did was defensive and proportional." Maya's mother had been crying on and off for hours, but now her voice was steel. "So why is she still here? Why hasn't she been released?" Torres sighed. "Because this is complicated, Mrs. Jenkins. Your daughter technically assaulted a police officer even though it was in self-defense. The local district attorney has to make a decision about whether to press charges. The police department has to investigate. And everyone involved knows that whatever happens here is going to be scrutinized by the entire country." "The entire country?" Maya's voice was small. Torres pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. Twitter was exploding. The hashtag #DarkMarineMaya was trending. Someone had gotten hold of Beverly's video. Or maybe Beverly had posted it herself. It was everywhere. Millions of views already, climbing by the second. The comments were a mix of support, outrage, disbelief, and vicious attacks. Maya stared at the screen, feeling numb. This morning she'd been driving home, excited to see her family. Now she was a viral sensation, a political lightning rod, the face of something much bigger than herself. The door opened, and the senior officer from the highway walked in. Up close, Maya could see his name tag read Lieutenant Anderson. He looked exhausted. "Sergeant Jenkins, I need to inform you that Officer Dale Hutchins has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. You're free to go. We'll be in touch as the investigation proceeds, but at this time, no charges are being filed against you." The relief in the room was palpable, but Anderson wasn't finished. "I also need to tell you that this isn't over. There will be more interviews, possibly a grand jury, definitely media attention. I've been doing this job for 28 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this situation." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "For what it's worth, I watched that footage. You showed remarkable restraint. Most people in your situation would have done a lot worse." Maya stood up, her legs unsteady. "Sir, I just want to go home. I understand that. But I need you to know something else." Anderson glanced at the others in the room, then back at Maya. "You're not the first person to complain about Officer Hutchins. There have been other incidents, other complaints over the years. They were handled internally and nothing ever came of them. But this time there's video. This time there's a witness. This time it's not going away." The drive to her parents' house was quiet. Her father drove, her mother sat in the back with Maya holding her hand. The lawyer followed in his own car. When they pulled up to the familiar brick ranch house where Maya had grown up, there were already 3 news vans parked across the street. "Oh, hell no," her father muttered. He pulled into the garage and closed the door before any of them got out. They entered through the kitchen, and Maya's mother immediately locked every door and drew every curtain. The house felt like a fortress and a prison at the same time. Maya sat at the kitchen table where she'd done homework as a kid. where she'd told her parents she was joining the Marines, where she'd shared meals during every leave for the past 8 years. Her mother made tea that nobody drank. Her father paced. Captain Torres made phone calls, his voice low and serious. Maya's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from fellow Marines, from former classmates, from people she hadn't talked to in years. Most were supportive. Some were curious. A few were angry, accusing her of attacking a police officer, of being disrespectful, of escalating the situation. She turned her phone face down on the table and tried not to cry. "You should eat something," her mother said, putting a plate in front of her. "I'm not hungry." "Mom." "Maya Elizabeth Jenkins, you eat something right now. You've been through hell today and you need your strength." So Maya ate, forcing down the sandwich her mother had made, tasting nothing. Outside, she could hear the muffled sounds of reporters doing stand-ups for the evening news. Her name was being said on television, probably right now on every major network. Torres came back into the kitchen, his phone call finished. "I just spoke with Lieutenant Colonel Hayes and with the Marine Corps Public Affairs Office. They're preparing a statement. The gist of it is that you're a decorated Marine with an exemplary service record, that you acted in self-defense and that the Corps supports you fully. They're also sending someone to handle media requests because there are already dozens." "I don't want to talk to the media," Maya said. "You probably won't have to, at least not right away. But Maya, you need to understand something. This story has legs. It's going to run for days, maybe weeks. People are going to have opinions about what happened today. Some will support you, others won't. It's going to be difficult." Maya looked at her parents, at the lawyer, at the familiar kitchen that suddenly felt foreign. "I just defended myself. That's all I did. I didn't ask for any of this." Her father sat down next to her and put his arm around her shoulders. "I know, baby girl, but sometimes doing the right thing puts you in the spotlight, whether you want it or not. Your mother and we're proud of you. The way you handled yourself today, the discipline you showed, the restraint, that's who we raised you to be." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around her. Through the window, she could see the glow of camera lights from the news van still parked on the street. They were waiting for her to emerge, waiting for a statement, waiting for something. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. It was from Beverly Chen, the woman who'd witnessed everything and stayed by her side for hours at the police station. "You're stronger than you know. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. What you did today was right. Sleep well, honey. Tomorrow is a new day." The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within 48 hours, 2 more women came forward with complaints about Officer Dale Hutchins. Both were black women. Both had been pulled over on the same stretch of Highway 94. Both described aggressive behavior, inappropriate comments, and intimidation tactics that went far beyond standard police procedure. Maya learned about them through Captain Torres, who'd essentially moved into her parents' guest room to manage the legal situation. He sat at their kitchen table, paperwork spread everywhere, his laptop showing news coverage from around the country. The first woman is named Teresa Brown, 43 years old, nurse at the county hospital. Hutchins pulled her over 2 years ago, claimed she was swerving. She says he made her get out of the car, questioned her aggressively, and touched her shoulder and arm repeatedly despite her asking him to stop. She filed a complaint with the department. Nothing happened. Maya felt sick. And the second woman? Keisha Williams, 26, teacher at the elementary school. Last year, almost the exact same spot on the highway, same pattern, pulled over for unclear reasons, aggressive behavior, inappropriate contact. She also filed a complaint. Also went nowhere. 2 years, Maya's father said, his voice tight with controlled anger. This has been going on for at least 2 years and nobody did anything? Torres nodded grimly. That we know of. There might be more. The state attorney general's office is getting involved now. They're opening a formal investigation into the department's handling of complaints against Hutchins. And there's talk of looking at other officers too, seeing if this was an isolated case or part of a larger pattern. The media attention intensified. Maya's story was no longer just about one incident. It was about systemic problems, about complaints ignored, about women who tried to speak up and were silenced. Reporters camped outside the police station, the courthouse, even outside Teresa and Keisha's homes. Everyone wanted interviews, statements, reactions. Maya finally agreed to one press conference organized by the Marine Corps and held at Camp Lejeune. Captain Torres coached her for hours beforehand. But when the moment came, Maya just spoke from the heart. She stood in her dress uniform, her ribbons and medals visible, her posture military perfect. Cameras flashed constantly, reporters shouted questions, but Maya waited for silence before she spoke. My name is Sergeant Maya Jenkins. I've served in the United States Marine Corps for 8 years. I'm a combat veteran and a martial arts instructor. On the afternoon in question, I was driving home to see my family when I was pulled over by Officer Hutchins. What happened next was recorded on his dash cam and witnessed by a civilian. I defended myself using the minimum force necessary when I was attacked during that traffic stop. She paused, looking directly at the cameras. I don't tell you this to justify my actions. The evidence speaks for itself. I tell you this because I want people to understand something. I had training. I had skills. I knew how to defend myself without causing serious injury. But what about all the people who don't have that training? What about all the people who filed complaints that went nowhere? What about all the people who were too scared to come forward at all? Her voice was steady, but inside she was shaking. I didn't ask to be the face of this story. But since I am, I want to say this clearly. What happened to me should never happen to anyone. Officer Hutchins had a history of complaints. The department knew about them and did nothing. That's not about me. That's about a system that failed to protect citizens from someone who abused his authority. The questions came fast after that, but Torres stepped in and ended the press conference. Maya had said what she needed to say. The rest was up to the justice system. The charges against Hutchins came down a week later. Assault, false imprisonment, abuse of authority, violation of civil rights. The district attorney, a black woman named Angela Foster, who'd been elected just 2 years prior, held her own press conference. The evidence in this case is overwhelming, Foster said, her voice firm and clear. Officer Hutchins pulled over Sergeant Jenkins without reasonable suspicion. He escalated the situation without cause. He used force against a citizen who was complying with his requests, and he did all of this while his own dashcam was recording. This is not a difficult case. This is not a gray area. This is a clear abuse of power, and my office will prosecute it to the fullest extent of the law. Maya watched the press conference from her parents' living room, her mother on one side, her father on the other. When Foster finished speaking, her mother started crying. Not sad tears this time, but something else. Relief, maybe. Or vindication. That woman is fierce, her father said with approval. She's not backing down, but not everyone saw it that way. The backlash was swift and brutal. Online, Maya was attacked by people who thought she should have simply submitted to whatever Hutchins wanted. She received death threats, vile messages, attacks on her character and her service. Someone doxed her parents' address, and the police had to increase patrols in their neighborhood. Fellow Marines formed an unofficial protective detail, taking shifts watching the house. The local police union called Foster's prosecution a witch hunt and held rallies in support of Hutchins. They claimed he was being railroaded, that he'd done nothing wrong, that he was the real victim. The rallies were tense affairs with counter-protesters showing up, leading to shouting matches and, once, a near riot that required the state police to break up. Maya tried to go back to her normal life, but nothing was normal anymore. Camp Lejeune gave her extended leave, but she couldn't hide at her parents' house forever. She tried going to the grocery store once, and someone recognized her. Half the store wanted to shake her hand. The other half glared at her like she was a criminal. Through it all, the investigation widened. The state attorney general's office discovered that complaints against Hutchins dating back 7 years had been systematically buried or dismissed. Internal affairs investigations had been cursory at best, deliberately incomplete at worst. His supervisors had protected him, covered for him, allowed him to continue operating despite multiple red flags. 3 supervisors were placed on administrative leave. The chief of police resigned under pressure. The entire department was placed under state oversight pending a complete review of their policies and procedures. Maya met with Teresa and Keisha one afternoon at a lawyer's office. The 3 of them sat together, strangers bound by shared trauma, and talked for hours. Teresa cried as she described how isolated she'd felt, how no one believed her, how she'd blamed herself for years. Keisha was angry, her fury barely contained as she talked about how the complaint process had been a joke, how she'd been made to feel like she was the problem. I was so scared that day, Keisha said, her hands trembling. I thought he was going to hurt me, and I had no way to defend myself. I'm not a Marine. I'm just a teacher. I didn't know what to do. Maya reached across the table and took her hand. You did exactly what you should have done. You reported it. You tried. The system failed you, not the other way around. But nothing happened until you, Teresa said quietly. All those complaints, all those reports, and nothing changed until someone fought back. The weight of that truth settled over all of them. Maya had become a symbol, but these women had been fighting longer, suffering silently, trying to make change through proper channels. They were the real heroes in this story. The three of them decided to do something together. They held a joint press conference, standing united, calling for comprehensive police reform in the county. They called for civilian oversight boards, mandatory body cameras, transparent complaint processes, and real consequences for officers who abused their authority. The press conference made national news. The image of three black women, three survivors standing together and demanding justice, became iconic. It was printed in newspapers, shared millions of times online, and used by reform advocates across the country. But it also made them targets. All three received increased threats. Security became a constant concern. Maya's Marine brothers and sisters rallied around them, providing protection when possible. But the constant vigilance was exhausting. Meanwhile, the trial date was set. Hutchins would face a jury in 3 months. His lawyer was already laying the groundwork for his defense, claiming he'd felt threatened, that he'd followed proper procedure, that Maya's martial arts training made her a weapon. It was a strategy designed to put Maya on trial instead of Hutchins. Captain Torres prepared her for what was coming. They're going to attack your character. They're going to question your service record, your training, your decisions that day. They're going to try to make the jury see you as the aggressor. Let them try, Maya said, and she meant it. She'd faced down enemies overseas. She'd survived combat. She'd been trained to stand firm under pressure. A courtroom couldn't be worse than a battlefield, but late at night, alone in her childhood bedroom, she wasn't so sure. The weight of everything, the scrutiny, the hatred, the responsibility of being a symbol for something bigger than herself, it all pressed down on her. She just wanted to drive home and see her family. Now she was the center of a national conversation about race, justice, and police accountability. Her phone buzzed with another message. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. How are you holding up, Jenkins? Maya stared at the message for a long time before responding. I'm tired, ma'am. I know you are. But you're doing important work here even if you didn't choose it. The Corps is proud of you. I'm proud of you. Stay strong. Maya set her phone down and looked out the window. The news vans were finally gone, but the damage was done. Her life would never be the same. She could never go back to being anonymous, to being just another Marine doing her job. But maybe that was okay. Maybe some things were worth fighting for, worth sacrificing privacy and peace for. Maybe standing up to injustice, even when it cost you everything, was exactly what she'd sworn to do when she put on the uniform. Tomorrow she'd start training again, getting ready for the trial. Tonight she'd let herself be tired. The courthouse was packed on the first day of trial. Maya sat at the prosecutor's table next to District Attorney Angela Foster, wearing her dress uniform at Foster's suggestion. Let the jury see who you really are, Foster had said. A decorated Marine who served her country, not the villain the defense is going to try to paint. Jury selection took 2 days. The defense attorney, a slick lawyer named Richard Crawford who'd flown in from Atlanta, challenged every potential juror who seemed sympathetic to Maya. The final jury was 8 white people, 3 black people, and 1 Latino man. Maya tried not to read too much into the demographics, but it was hard not to worry. Crawford's opening statement was exactly what Captain Torres had predicted. He painted Hutchins as a dedicated officer doing his job who encountered an aggressive suspect with military combat training. He emphasized Maya's martial arts expertise, making it sound like she was a dangerous weapon. He suggested she'd overreacted, that a reasonable person would have simply complied. Foster's opening was different. She didn't shy away from the facts. She acknowledged Maya's training but framed it as the only reason she'd survived the encounter. Then she did something brilliant. She showed the dashcam footage right there in her opening statement, letting the jury see for themselves what had really happened. The courtroom was silent as the video played. Maya watched the jurors' faces as they saw Hutchins pull her over without cause, saw the escalation, saw him grab her, saw him reach for his taser. Several jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One older woman's hand went to her mouth. "That is what self-defense looks like," Foster said quietly as the video ended. "That is what it looks like when a citizen is forced to protect herself from someone who was supposed to protect her." The prosecution's case took a week. Foster called Beverly Chen first, the woman who'd witnessed everything. Beverly was calm and clear, describing exactly what she'd seen, her voice never wavering even when Crawford tried to suggest she hadn't really understood what was happening. "I understood perfectly," Beverly said firmly. "I saw a police officer attack a woman for no reason. I saw that woman defend herself with remarkable control, and I saw her immediately call for help and cooperate fully when backup arrived. That's not a criminal. That's a hero," Crawford objected, but the damage was done. The jury had heard it. Then came the expert witnesses. The prosecution called a retired police captain who specialized in use of force training. He'd reviewed the dashcam footage frame by frame and concluded that Hutchins had violated every standard protocol. He'd had no reason to pull Maya over. He'd escalated without cause. He'd used force against a compliant citizen. And his decision to reach for his taser was not only unjustified, but dangerous. "In my 35 years in law enforcement," the expert testified, "I've never seen a clearer case of an officer creating a dangerous situation through his own actions." Sergeant Jenkins did exactly what any reasonable person would do when attacked. She defended herself. Crawford tried to tear him apart on cross-examination, but the expert held firm. You couldn't argue with the video. It was all there, recorded and undeniable. The prosecution also called the other women. Teresa Brown took the stand and described her encounter with Hutchins 2 years earlier. She was nervous, her voice shaking at times, but her story was powerful. When Crawford suggested she might be misremembering or exaggerating, Teresa looked directly at the jury. "I remember every second of that day. I remember how scared I was. I remember how powerless I felt. I remember filing a complaint and being told nothing could be done. I remember learning to avoid that highway because I was terrified of encountering him again." You don't forget something like that. You live with it every day. Keisha's testimony was similar, adding another piece to the pattern. By the time the prosecution rested their case, the jury had heard from multiple witnesses, seen the dashcam footage multiple times, and heard from experts. The case against Hutchins was overwhelming. The defense tried to fight back. Crawford called character witnesses who testified that Hutchins was a good officer, a family man, someone who'd never shown bias or aggression before. But under Foster's cross-examination, several of them admitted they hadn't actually worked with him closely, or had only known him socially. Then Hutchins himself took the stand. It was a risky move, and Maya could see why Crawford was hesitant. But Hutchins insisted, and it might have been his biggest mistake. He was arrogant on the stand, defensive and combative. He claimed Maya had been suspicious, that her out-of-state plates and her initial questions had raised red flags. He insisted he'd felt threatened by her military training, even though he'd had no way of knowing about it at the time. She was aggressive from the start, Hutchins testified. I could tell she was the type to cause problems. Foster let him talk, giving him rope to hang himself. Then she started her cross-examination. Officer Hutchins, you said Sergeant Jenkins was aggressive. Can you point to the specific moment in the dashcam footage where she displayed aggression? Hutchins stumbled. It was her attitude, her tone. Her tone? Foster replayed the footage. Let's listen to her tone. Can I ask why I was pulled over? Does that sound aggressive to you? She was questioning my authority. She was exercising her constitutional rights. Are you saying that asking questions is grounds for the use of force? The exchange went on for over an hour. Foster systematically dismantled every claim Hutchins made, using his own dashcam footage to contradict him. By the end, he was flustered, angry, and had essentially admitted on the stand that he'd pulled Maya over for no legitimate reason. Crawford tried to rehabilitate him on redirect, but the damage was catastrophic. The jury had seen Hutchins for who he really was, an officer who'd abused his authority and gotten caught. The closing arguments came on a Friday afternoon. Crawford gave it his best shot, trying to paint Maya as a trained fighter who'd used excessive force against a police officer just doing his job. But his argument rang hollow after everything the jury had seen and heard. Foster's closing was measured and powerful. She didn't need theatrics. She just walked the jury through the evidence, piece by piece, showing how every element of the charges had been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Officer Hutchins had no reason to pull over Sergeant Jenkins. None. He had no reason to order her out of her vehicle. None. He had no reason to grab her or reach for his taser. None. What he did have was a pattern of behavior, a history of complaints, and a belief that he was untouchable. Foster paused, looking at each juror. He was wrong. In this country, no one is above the law, not even police officers. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and 47 minutes. Maya spent that time in a small room with her parents, Captain Torres, and Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, who'd flown down for the verdict. Nobody said much. There wasn't much to say. Everything that could be done had been done. Now it was up to 12 strangers. When the bailiff came to bring them back to the courtroom, Maya's legs felt weak. Her mother grabbed her hand and squeezed. "Whatever happens, we're proud of you," she whispered. The courtroom was packed. Media from across the country had shown up for the verdict. Teresa and Keisha sat in the front row behind the prosecution table. Beverly Chen was there too, along with dozens of other supporters. The jury filed in. Maya tried to read their faces but couldn't. The foreperson, a middle-aged white man who worked as an accountant, handed the verdict form to the judge. Judge Patricia Hamilton reviewed it silently, her expression neutral. Then she handed it back to the clerk to read. In the case of the State versus Dale Hutchins on the count of assault, we the jury find the defendant guilty. Maya's mother gasped. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge banged her gavel. On the count of false imprisonment, we the jury find the defendant guilty. On the count of abuse of authority, we the jury find the defendant guilty. On the count of violation of civil rights, we the jury find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all counts. Maya felt tears running down her face before she even realized she was crying. Behind her, Teresa was sobbing. Keisha was gripping the railing so hard her knuckles were white. Beverly was clapping, earning a sharp look from the judge but not stopping. Hutchins sat at the defense table, his face red, his jaw clenched. Crawford was already preparing for the appeal, but for now justice had been served. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Hamilton was thorough and fair. She acknowledged Hutchins' years of service but emphasized the severity of his crimes and the pattern of behavior that had been exposed during trial. Officer Hutchins, you violated the trust placed in you by the citizens you were sworn to protect. You abused your authority not once but repeatedly. You targeted vulnerable members of your community and silenced those who tried to speak out. Your actions have damaged the relationship between law enforcement and the community, and that damage will take years to repair. She sentenced him to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. It wasn't as much as some had hoped for, but it was more than many police officers ever received for similar crimes. It was something. Outside the courthouse, Maya stood with Teresa, Keisha, and Beverly as reporters surrounded them. Foster had prepared them for this moment, but standing there under the bright lights with microphones thrust toward them was still overwhelming. Teresa spoke first. Today the system worked. Not perfectly, but it worked. Our voices were heard. Our truth was believed. This is for every person who's been wronged by